Alright, hello and welcome back to another V Rising video. Today we're going to be going over the V Rising AMA that Community Manager Jeremy Bearson just put out. And I will tackle some of the questions and answers that he got. As for the video itself, he mentions here that he can't talk about anything unannounced, and so questions involving 1.1 are going to be a little more vague, but we'll still go through all the questions and take a look to see what his answers are. So I'm going to skip the actual questions themselves because Jeremy, in his answers, has the questions themselves. So, and this is I will also preface this might be a little bit of a longer video just because it was a long Q&A. So yeah, well, let's get into it. So I'm going to go on a limb here and hoping anything may refer to things beyond the update or questions regarding PvP balance, such shall be fun. Yes, those are all fine, and this is the right place to ask. How is new testing mechanics done? Is there anyone within the company who plays PvP? Playtesting, feeling them out in game design, and then getting our last impressions during the beta playtests. We have some people, particularly in game design, that do enjoy PvP and have plenty of people who enjoy PvP games. And then I will also mention, I'm not going to go through every single question because I will lose my voice if I do so. I'm just going to try and scan through the important questions, which is obviously subjective, so if you see something that you want me to look at, I can do that. Why was the decision made to further increase the power of defensive abilities after the room round? Was it a mistake? I only vaguely remember this, so I'm asking around and I'll come back with a good answer. We're hoping for more context, but the answer is that there is a lot of reasoning that goes into individual design decisions like this, and it's hard to go back and pinpoint the exact reasons at a time so long after Gloomrot. So, this is an interesting question, in all honesty. I do think defensive abilities after Gloomrot did get buffed. I don't know how far it was, but I do remember prior to Gloomrot, there wasn't as much of emphasis on using defensive abilities, and you could kind of get away with using offensive abilities more for boss combat, whereas nowadays, to beat something like Dracula, you borderline need to take 2 defensive abilities for certain phases, and so I wonder if that's what this person's trying to ask about. Large emphasis on adding new content rather than refining what already exists. Is this accurate? Yes, we know everything is interconnected. Yes, we are focusing on adding new content instead of redefining what already exists. We talk about adding a fusion forge as new content, yes, but it's completely refined how you interact with legendary weapons at every level. So yeah, this is a really interesting new concept, which is the fusion forge. I think I'm curious as to see how they'll interact with new content and old content and blending the two together. So that should be interesting to see. We've got some PvP specific questions here, so we'll skip past that because I'm going to focus mostly on PvE today. This is wipe. This is a whip change question. Missile attack speed nerf. This is very specific, so we'll just skip through that. Alright, so will my gorgeous vampire locks ever return to me? Will I ever see them flowing through the wind of Silverlight Hills? One of our 3 actually does have some ideas how we could do this. Having looked at some other games and how they pull it off, it is impossible that we do at some point. So that's really cool. It would be interesting to see a little more variation with regards to like hairstyles and stuff. I know there are quite a lot, but one thing is when you wear a hat in this game, you don't get to see the hair moving through the hat, and so I think it would be really cool to have that. So, and I am drinking tea here as well, so I apologize. Are we getting a new spell school? Will this update have a drill spell? Can't say except for the drill spell thing. As much as I want them to add a Grand Login spell school, it's not looking likely. Okay, so interesting to hear is that he says I can't say. I assume based off of that context, the fact that he can't say it might refer to the fact that he himself is implying that there might be a new spell school. I get the feeling that with this update there probably will be a new spell school, just because of the fact that we got a spell school in Gloomrot and didn't get one in 1.0, and so I think it would make sense for them to add in another one, just because they because it would make sense with the like longevity of the game. My guess is it's going to be like a shadow spell school, just because of like the new area and so on and forth. But we don't really know too much about the area, and so it could be anything. We'll find out. We're making 15 new white weapons, probably not, but we are updating them with unique models. So yes, this was mentioned in 1.1, the dev blog, and you can see that they are changing the they're changing how the new weapons look. It's going to be really cool. We're getting new weapons, same way longbow upper. Can't say. Interesting. Okay. So one is such a major balance patch 3 friends. Sometimes to change the meta. So this is, they basically, Jeremy here mentions that they spend a lot of time, and so then they don't want the wipes to be getting in the way. We're going to just cut this because I think the whip is a good weapon. Are these dark mages? This is the new content thing. No, well, sort of, you'll see. So interesting. We're going to find out eventually what this will be. Personal questions. Thoughts on adding a jewel modifier? They suggest here that this is a good suggestion, so maybe they'll push it forward. Alright, how much internal refactoring might we be looking at for the update here? Examples: renaming, removing, or changing the orders of entity queries and systems, adding, removing, or making significant changes to components on existing entity archetypes. Reworking existing feature systems to support new ones, so we can expect in the update. Rough estimate is perfectly acceptable. Thank you for your time. We're not going to be doing refactoring of old archetypes and components, at least not nearly as much as we did with 1.0. Okay, which is, in my personal opinion, is good. I kind of want more new content rather than old content. We are upgrading the Unity version this time around, so it won't require nearly so many changes. So I assume that means that they are coding in Unity. I could be wrong about that, but that's pretty cool. Let's do some Rising. So yeah, the technical questions here. Right, I'm going to scan through these questions here as well. We went over pretty extensively why we did certain changes and why we couldn't do others. I also answered a lot of this a bit further up. But suffice to say, most of the changes asked for, like movement speed caps, and much more significant changes to the whip, like moving more damage to the sweet spot. Either didn't work very well in practice, or the game as a whole, or would have required a wipe to do. Some of the changes we're looking to implement now that we're able to, and we're hoping to be able to get some balanced feedback earlier in the process than last year, so we have more time to make adjustments and readjustments before we hit that point of no return before dropping the big patch once again. So yeah, I'm going to just go through some of these questions and just give him the answers. Well, the game overall changed a lot in many good ways. Raid system feels like it is still an early alpha version outside of swapping golem ability in the hotbar. Stairs, floors, and so had an impact on raiding. It's a question because raiding has been contentious from the start, and I understand frustrations with it. I don't think we have any plans to overhaul raiding for the next patch. However, there are a lot of issues with raiding and how it affects player motivation, interacts with player freedom in building, and just overall affects the economy of the game. It makes it a really difficult subject to tackle, and for now, we haven't found a solution to pursue. This is an interesting question. I think a rating system would be intriguing to have in the game, because then it would make the home environment a little more open-ended. But yeah, I can understand that from a technical perspective it would be tough to get around to. Is the new patch going to be the last update? I can't say it will be the last update, but I can't really speak too far in the future in general right now. Sorry if that isn't a great answer. Okay, so this is good. This is great news. I was under the impression it was going to be the last update. So if we do get more content, that's always a bonus. Alright, so will Coliseum have a built-in arena? Unlikely, but there's a good reason for that. Interesting why he says that. Well, maybe we'll get a little more context later. Are there plans to add global queues for a different game mode within the same client? Redacted game title cough. Lots of games, maybe we can get one in the game, like Destiny. Or any plans to make a global queue for game modes. Okay. Will there be more weirder skins? I know you guys do a variety of outfits, but could use some wacky ones. And then this person attached the photo here of, I think, Elden Ring. The mood of the game is really important to us, so we've endeavored not to get too silly with outfits. If outfits lean towards more silly, it's with judgment to the limits we're willing to push without hurting the vibe of the game too much. We have some humor, but a good example of how we do that is the fisherman. The fish are a little cartoony, the voice lines are goofy, but he still got a very dark, gothic aesthetic. And yeah, I really like this. I think this is a great touchstone. I think it would be cool to have a little more silliness in the game overall, but it might breach into the tone. Mount skins. Keeping it horsey, yeah, that's what I assumed it would be the case. Will there be EX abilities? I don't think so. Okay. Is it possible to have rift events in multiple different areas rather than just the Dracula-related region? It's not impossible, but it will take a lot more dev time to implement than we originally hoped when we were first designing it. Back in 1.0, it was something we were hoping to be able to do, but as you can see, it didn't seem feasible, so we didn't pursue it then. Okay, let's talk about this for a minute. I'm gonna drink my tea first. So, with the Rift events and the replayability of the Rift events, I do think something along this area, if they were working on this and wanted to implement it more so, it could open up a couple more doors in the game. I never really saw it as something that would be fully across the entire world, but I find that an interesting concept. Are we getting any new forms? And trying to speak on this. Do you want any future announcements from me, sir? Not any serious ones, anyway. Huh. Okay. Question about building. Some new crafting stations. There may be new building pieces if you have time to fit it in. Okay, that's really cool. New experience to other zones like weather effects. More focus on gameplay center features. So yeah, I do remember for a while, and I can't remember if it was ever added in, but there was like a rain system that they were talking about, and I don't know if it was added or if it was dismissed. Alright, and then I will mention here as well, these are my questions, so I'll go over these a little more in depth, obviously, because I'm the one who asked them. Got a really long questionnaire here as well. Alright, when approximately will the 1.1 update be dropping? Unfortunately, this one I can't reveal just yet. It'll be in a future dev blog. Thank goodness. Okay, so at least we will get an update soon. Alright, so this is my questions here. So we'll go over what I said and then what he said. So there seems to be a lack of endgame content. You previously mentioned that there's a clear end goal, which is beating Dracula. Will there be any form of endgame content, i.e. dungeons, raids, etc., that players can participate in after beating Dracula? If 1.1 is the final update, it would be really cool if there was an option for players to continue playing after they finish the game. From our point of view, V Rising is a complete journey as it is. It doesn't really aim to provide strictly PvE content after you've killed Dracula. After that, there's PvP options to explore, or if you want to experiment with castle building and decorating, there's that. One way we tried to offer more content was creating Brutal Mode to give a greater and more interesting challenge for people who had already played the standard mode. Beyond that, I don't think we're looking to expand the game past where we felt like we put a pretty definitive end. Alright, so this was an interesting response to it. I think I will mention that I've kind of gone through a bit of this AMA, and so I know that he will expand a little bit more on this, so I'm going to bookmark this for now, come back to it in a couple seconds. You guys added a chessboard with 1.1, 1.0. Why is it no longer there? We really just don't have any systems to support a chess minigame right now. It was a funny idea to add it, and maybe someday we will, if someone can put the time into making it work. For now, though, it's very low priority. This is very sad, because I was very looking forward to playing chess in the game. As to your question about the narrative aspect of the Rising, there's a lot of inspiration that initially came from classic, media, like Dracula, films like Nosferatu, and modern media like Netflix's Castlevania series that had just been starting to get popular around the office around the time they were looking for inspiration. So this is really cool. I think a lot of people were asking about this originally when the game came out, because it did come out right at the same time as I think Netflix's Castlevania, so it's interesting to see that this proves that a lot of it was inspired, which is really cool. So there would be a form of hardcore mode. something that we've been talking about for a while, at least as long as I've been here, about 3 years, though the game was known for about 2 years before I joined, which is interesting, okay? And it kinda came up again semi-recently when Hardcore WoW got popular. I think the main reason we haven't done it yet is there are a few critical design concerns that we'd have to address with it. We haven't really determined what we'd have to do to make it happen in a way that we could meet our standard for quality. No plans for right now, but anything is possible, just don't get your hopes up. Interesting. Okay, so this basically confirms this might be a thing, but they haven't fully confirmed it yet. Alright. So these are questions revolving sleeping. He kind of addressed them a little bit, and says that it's kind of integral to the game itself. How can we conquer Vardarin after defeating Dracula? I personally achieve this by killing Solars 2 times when I'm having a rough day. Understandable. Yeah. Mounted enemies when? It is actually really funny how difficult this is to answer. Probably 1.1, but knowing stun, not exactly what he means by mounted enemies. Unfortunately, I can get more specific than that. This is one of the most vague answers he gave us, and so I'm really curious as to, I think he's basically alluding to the fact that this will be a thing. So yeah, we'll see how that's going to work out. So, okay. So this one was just the really long one. He kind of addressed it and basically said I'm not going through them, so we'll skip that. Similar to MMO bosses, I don't think there's any deliberate crossover with MMO boss encounters. We are constantly pushing to do different things and provide new experiences with our V-Blood fights, and that might lead to some familiar styles of fight because a lot of our devs have a lot of experience with MMOs. Maybe some common inspiration. So that, yeah, that's interesting. I always did kind of have the garnered that, like, I had a bit of an MMO inspiration. So and I feel like it plays a little bit like that at times. So that's a great question. Difficulty settings came. Would it be possible to be a new difficulty in the future? By that I mean above brutal mode. Right, custom settings are still there, more than ever in fact, for creating another higher difficulty setting. I think it's unlikely as it stands right now. Brutal mode is already so difficult for the majority of players. This is true. I do feel like it would be cool though if we did get one or some form of an extra difficulty level, but we'll see. So, I also lost an amazing job perfecting old areas and bosses. Reworking. I can't really speak to this right now, but I will say that it was always open to new odd content to old areas. Okay, so yeah, we might see more reworks, which is cool. We got some gem questions here, so feel free to read this really quickly. I'm not going to talk about it though. Can't talk about the new area either. Have you considered adding more interaction to the game? Any other interactions? We talked about PvE raids, for instance, basically since the game's inception. The main problem we've run into with implementing them is finding a level interactivity, warning, etc. that works with the flow of the game and feels good and rewarding. Very well aware that it's something players are really interested in, but the challenge would be solving a few really big problems we have with how it would practically play out and feel for the player, as well as issues with its ties to progression and just the overall place in the game. So, I think Jeremy talked about this in one of the previous questions, but yeah, it seems like this is something they're really wanting to delve into, but struggling to do so. So we'll see how this will turn out if this does become a thing one day. Personal question here. More personal questions, and then a thank you. Okay. So I sent another AMA questionnaire here, so I'll go through some of my other questions I put in. Alright. Is there any plans to add an auto sorter? Specified day and night hours in the server settings. Blood ritual could be interesting. I wish this was short. Planning to look at some things with the day and night system to explore if there's anything we'd want to do for 1.1, so no promises, but we are looking at it. Interesting, I think I missed this. So yeah, this means that they might be implementing something with the day and night system. I don't know how that necessarily would work, but I think maybe like a blood moon kind of system would be interesting to see if they interact with that as well. Auto sorter is something we've considered, like having your servants sort your stuff for you. This would be so handy. Not something we'll have time for 1.1 though. Okay, interesting though that they mention it. Alright, so now my questions again. So I clarified my question here. Feel free to read this around my first one. So yeah, I understand. I think there is a direction we could go with trying to add replayable content or combat challenges. Right now, I don't think we're moving to add anything along those lines, but please keep letting us know what sounds good to you. It is extremely helpful for us in how we determine what we're doing next to know what players are asking for. And the more people that ask for something, the more likely that we are to consider it, even if it's something we didn't initially think would be possible. An example of this is second floors in castles. So yeah, this seems to be a commonality. A lot of people in this AMA have been asking about repeatable content. So I wonder if they will eventually go down it, but it sounds like something that they're not focused on right now, which is a little unfortunate because I think it's like what would cement the game to the next level in my personal opinion. But you know, at least they know that it's something that's being asked about. Ask here about fishing. Maybe I think we want to avoid spending too much time on fishing because it might take away from more vampire activities. Understandable. So now I asked about the narrative thing. This is a bit of a tough question, but there are currently very limited avenues to express the lore. Consider some options to add more lore on most of the world, but I think right now we're fairly dedicated to expressing it more through environment, storytelling, voice lines, and descriptions that can be found in the game. Parts of the narrative that really grab you that think you would be cool expand on, you should let us know. I actually work very closely with that stuff, so I find it really interesting what players are connecting to and what we can do to make the game more immersive and make the narrative more engaging. Interesting. Pet option, there were ideas very early on to give you a kind of raven familiar. It's not out of the question, but we want to have some kind of important gameplay element. That is super interesting that originally they were going to have a raven in the game. Yeah, I think that would have been really cool. I'll skip this question because Mortem is supposed to be enemy zone. Yeah, I can understand where they're coming from with that, so that's fine. Shard boss is acting as next level V, but I was asking here a question about like would they have like big bosses when the game to be solo, and so he basically addressed the fact that they're going to be making it so that you can always beat it by yourself. Alright, and then I think this is going to be the last round of questions here, so I'll go through them. I noticed that for a vampire game there's this lack of neck biting. The only instance of neck bite is when you use exposed vein, which requires the presence of another vampire. Seems you pretty much nailed this with the case. It lets us, so specifically animations. So yeah, I think this is addressed in a good way. We do see neck biting with the exposed vein, but with the animations of having to like draw the blood from a spider, it would make things a lot tougher. So like it is a weird animation to see like the hand go out and then like sucking of the blood from the hand, but I can understand where they're coming from. Question around the advanced sawmill. I can't really get into future content that we haven't announced. This is something though that I assume they will probably include in 1.1 just because it is missing. So sacrificial site, can't really get into future content. Will Throne of Darkness be used rather than just a big fancy chair? Can't speak to it. Shadow Realm, based on Drax Castle Shadow Realm mechanics, it could technically be useful for a randomized, repeatable dungeon. This is one of the best things to mention. I'm not going to expose this person, but this was such a great idea. And I remember when I was reading this at the time, I was thinking, this is like literally perfect, because it is a separate realm area, and so it could be perfect. And it would make sense as well that once you finish the game, you beat Dracula, you still end up coming back to the Dracula area. So it would make the Dracula area very like exposed with a lot of people, which would make all the high level people in one area. So it would just work out overall, in my personal opinion. I'll keep the suggestion in mind though, which is great. So that's really great to hear. Regarding lore, the world story is quite rich, however it's scattered around piece by piece in several devlogs. Would it be possible to make collectibles out of them so they can be accessed in-game? Lore within devlogs, interesting. He addressed this, can't really provide these books in the game. Lots of time, I want to read them by the few people who were living at the time, like Solaris and you. Interesting. Okay. So I can say that these are the ideas we've considered when it comes to PvE rating, but there are a lot of complications to make work in Rising in a way we'd be happy with and wouldn't worsen the experience of the parts of the game that work really well. So happy to take any suggestions, and I appreciate the creative energy. So yeah, this was great questions. Overall, really great anime as well. It's interesting to see that they are going to be, it sounds like they're working more on the content for 1.1 rather than suggestions around replayability and Dracula and stuff. But as long as we're getting new content, that's all that really matters to me. So I'm very excited, and I really think Jeremy did a great Q&A. All his answers were really great. Obviously, he can't say everything that that the dev team is working on, but it was still interesting to see what is in store for Rising. So thank you for checking in, and I hope you have a great day.